Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.
Really
No, no
appreciate
problem,
it.
man. Glad to be here, man.
Yeah.
And you can hear me okay, right?
Oh yeah, super. Very
Super.
cool.
Okay, cool.
And I like the symbols there, so that's a nice touch. So.
Yeah, it's like I'm at the kit, And it's cool too because I got my whole rig set up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can start playing actually now because my first question's gonna be like, but I first found out about you when I bought this record from Liberty, like Liberty's Tactiles.
Oh man! Oh wow! That was back in the day with Mark Shim and
Yeah, and Greg and Stefan Crump and
Stephen Crump. Yeah, that was a good band, man. That was a good band.
This record, like I saw Liberty on a gig, and I was like, "Well, do you have an album?" And he was like, "Yeah, I have 2 of these left." I was like, "Okay." Went home, put this on, and you're playing on this one. I was just like, "Man, what?"
Yeah.
And ever since then, I was just like, "Okay, I gotta follow this."
Wow. Yeah, that's like early in bass because with Liberty, Greg Osby, Steve Coleman, those were like the my M bass bros. So we were always trying to figure out different varieties of rhythm, and then they also went on this kind of like harmonic journey that they were trying to figure out different cycles, based on people's like birthdays or birth cycles and trying to weird stuff, but it was fun. Like I enjoyed the ride.
You have mentioned M-Bass. Were you ever part of Steve's workshops and stuff like that?
Yeah. I played with Steve.
Oh, you did?
Actually, me and Sean Grickman auditioned at the same time. I mean, he got the gig, but I got a chance to play with Steve Coleman a bunch. But Greg Osby was pretty much my mentor. Like he was the first person that I ever got a chance to record with. And man, I was hooked, man. Like those cats, they just think differently, man. Like, their brain waves, their frequency is just on a different level. And I appreciated that because it enhanced my playing, so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love those records. Inner Circle. I mean, man.
Inner Circle.
When I heard Inner Circle, those tunes like Interruption and Stride Logic, like with the breaks, man. When I heard that record, Jesus.
I wish we could redo it, man. Like, because I feel like I was so young then that I was just pretty much playing the part, and I was still learning the information as it was being, given to me. So now that the information is more embedded into, my DNA and who I am, like it'd be interesting to play that same music now because I feel like we could just go so many places because, the maturity of the band was already there at that age. Like, Greg was a really, profound leader.
Sure.
He just had a way of guiding us, me, Jason Moran, Taurus Mateen, Stephen Harris, and just giving us just different information. Like you didn't have to pay attention to what he was doing, but it was available. And the availability of that, I feel like, linguistically, like pretty much it enhanced our language, our musical language. And I was like, man, this is crazy. Like, this is great. Like, I didn't know how else to talk about it because it was so, I hadn't heard anything like that before. Because I grew up listening to like Miles Davis and John Coltrane and, Charlie Parker, everybody that's great, Cannonball Adderley. And, then I came to know Charles Lloyd, the great. And, variety of music, but I never heard anything like M-bass music, man. Like, I was like, wow, this is some crazy stuff.
That blew my mind too. I remember when I first heard Marvin, those Steve Coleman records with Marvin. And, I was writing down structures I didn't know. So I really wanted to figure out. Then, you write it down and you're like, okay, it's 19. That's like the entire structure. But wait a second. That structure is repeated like 3 times while the head is going. I was like, man, what's happening? Like really crazy stuff. Yeah.
And the funny thing is that, you know, at least with Steve Coleman, he didn't write a whole bunch of stuff out. Like, he would sing it to you.
Yeah,
It's like a chant. And so he'd be like, you know, take out the coal train, Birdland, Birdland, take out the coal train, Birdland, Birdland. He was like, that's the rhythm. Play that rhythm. You like, take out the Birdland. Man, that jump become a mantra, man. You be sitting on that bad boy for so long that you just, all of a sudden, all this information start coming out, and then you be like,
exactly. Yeah.
You like, woo! Oh man,
So groovy. Yeah.
good times, man. Good times.
Yeah, you mentioned Greg. I wanted to ask you this like later, but since you mentioned Greg, how did that gig with Greg happen? By the way, I know it was like Further Ado was 97 or 96, but how did the gig with Greg happen?
It was kind of rare, man. So I was still in college. I was at MSM, and my combo director, who is Rodney Jones, great guitar player.
I love Rodney. Yeah, man.
Amazing. You know,
the X-Field. I have that record with you.
Oh yeah. So
I love them.
the X-Field record was the first time I met Greg Eigsti. That was the first time we met. And so from that record, you know, he just hit me up and was like, man, I'm trying to put together a band. Are you down to be in the ensemble? And I was like, absolutely. And by that time, like you said, it was 97. I had moved back down to Houston because I went to theology school. And so I ended up coming back up, you know, because he had a tour, and I think it was like late 96. And it was interesting too, because the pianist who was supposed to play for the tour, like we were supposed to go to Europe for like 6 weeks. You know?
Oh man. Wow.
My first tour, I'm like 19.
Wow.
I'm like, oh man. And so he was looking for a piano player, and I was like, dude, you gotta use my bro, you know. And he was like, who is that? I was like, man, this cat Jason Moran, just trust me, like he's gonna be killing. And so like there's a video where we played at Quasimodo in Berlin.
Oh really? Oh man. Wow.
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube. That's me and Jason. I was like 19, Jason was probably 20.
Oh wow.
And man, great. I mean, Jason came in, killed it. Yeah, you know, Greg had mercy on us. We just pretty much played some standards. He had a couple of originals that we kind of messed around with, but that was it, man. From Rodney Jones, that was the birthplace. Rodney Jones was the birthplace for a lot for me, because on that, you know, X-Field album, the pianist was Kevin Hayes.
Yeah, sure.
So, you know, I did a recent post about Kevin Hayes on my Instagram, because I was like, yo, from beat one, man, Kevin Hayes was like the homie. You know what I mean? And then, because I got the thing, Kevin Hayes and Bill Stewart were roommates for years. I never got to, you know, Bill Stewart is not one of those guys you can get close to, you know?
Yeah, sure.
You know, he's cool, but he's like, he prefers his distance, you know? And I respect that, you know? It's like if you're at a festival and y'all hanging and having some wine or whatever, he's cool. But, you know, he enjoys his personal life. So I pretty much learned a lot about Bill Stewart through Kevin Hayes. So, because Kevin Hayes would always invite me over and be like, man, let's just play. And so we would just play at the crib. And so I got to play all those Bill Stewart simples.
Oh, man, really?
Man,
oh,
man,
that's
this
cool.
was like 95, you know, this is early, man. I was like, man, in probably like 97 to 98, because we were trying to do some trio stuff, some quartet stuff. Like he was just, man. So, you know, yeah.
That's beautiful. And Rodney was your teacher on the university, basically, like a combo teacher, right?
He was my combo teacher, yes.
Oh yeah, he's also such an underrated guitarist. I mean, like, you know, like,
man, he's a guru, man. You know,
such a composer also, you know, like really.
He's a great composer, and I think he just wasn't attached. I remember having some deep conversations with him away from music. Mm-hmm. He was always into, you know, pushing the envelope as far as like humanity and spirituality. Like I remember him talking about like going a week, you know, no food and just fasting, and you know, concepts that just really hadn't gotten to my mind, which it eventually got into my mind. That's why, you know, I went to theology school. But in the beginning, I was like, wow, you know, that's the thing. That's what you're doing. And he was just like, yeah, man, you know. And now I get it. Like I understand. Like he just, I think once he had attained being musical director for the Rosie O'Donnell show, like, he had made enough money and but also to see what money can do. And but he remained true to himself, and I feel that even to this day, I feel like he's one of those cats that if you see him, you're gonna feel his presence first. You'd be like, oh man, that dude right there, like that's a cool cat.
That's so important. yeah. I have to know when you mentioned like the 6-week tour with Greg, I have like a couple of bootlegs from that tour, like 98, I think, 97.
Oh. Yeah.
From Bremen or whatever, like from Germany, like a couple of gigs.
Yeah.
Love it.
Oh,
like
they probably came out later. Yeah, it was
96. Six of One and the 13th Floor and all those tunes you guys play. And it's like, really, it's burning, like radio, probably German radio recorded them or something, because the quality is really good. But I wanted to ask you, how was that like first experience of Europe for you? Like, I know in the last few years, you've been so much in Europe with so many different players, but this first Europe and such a long one, how was that like for you as such a young musician? I mean,
man, I'll be honest, I had no thoughts. Everything was so brand new. And I got to tour with my best friend, like Jason Moran. We grew up together in high school. So, man, I really believe we just went sightseeing. Like we just went around, no matter where we went. Jason was like, "Yo, they got this crazy museum we should check out." I was like, "Killer." So we would do that during the day, and then at night, we played a gig. I mean, we were so young, so we wasn't drinking and we wasn't doing anything. Like we were just children on the road and just green, like just super, super naive, but excited to have the opportunity to see different cultures. Like I didn't know what to expect, and the currency was different then. Like the euro wasn't in, so it was like you always had to exchange different money. If you went from Germany to France to Italy, to Spain, like it was just you just kept getting all this money. And I kept a lot of it just so that, because I knew one day if I had kids, I wanted them to see something they would never know about. Like, to have a lira, it's like, it's different.
Very nice. Yeah. It's very different. Yeah. I still have money from Yugoslavia.
Oh, see,
it's like 80s,
right?
Bills for 50,000. Like,
right?
Really? So
absolutely.
Bizarre. Yeah.
Oh man.
But speaking of that tour, I wanted to ask you also this: like, how was Greg as a leader to you guys? How much freedom did he leave in the music to?
Oh man, he gave absolute freedom, like the whole time. Like it was just. Yeah, I mean, Greg is kind of like one of those guys that just likes to have fun. So, the whole tour, he's just, poking fun at different people and, teasing you about what you're eating and, and because he always made fun of me because it was my first time on the road. Like we played at Riney Scott's in London, right? And they had this dish called chicken Kiev. Which is like, chicken stuff with cheese and all that kind of stuff. But I kept calling it chicken keve. Like, I don't know why. It was just, that's what I saw. When I saw it, it was chicken. So he just, man, for like the whole tour, he'd be like, chicken keve? And I was like, man, stop. Like, it's just, that's what I saw. Like, I understand it's chicken Kiev, based off,
Yeah.
But, that was the kind of guy he was that, he was always up for the opportunity to keep you educated, because that was very important to him. First and foremost, because it's impossible to have a conversation with someone if their education doesn't match. And I hate to use the word education, but it's more like if their awareness of life and terminologies and even labels, whether you agree with them or not. But if it's not on par, then it's just impossible. Like also like musically, like if you're trying to play in a band, if somebody in the band hasn't checked out a lot of music, a lot of the history within the music, or just music in general, there's a limitation in what you will be able to offer, even though you might know more. And so I think Greg was one of those type of guys that he wanted to ensure that, like, yo, check this out, know about this, read this book, check this out, go, listen to this.
Important.
It was always this information, and that information, really helped, man. It had a way of broadening your vocabulary and, just giving you knowledge about a lot of different things that you probably just wouldn't have been aware of if you hadn't had a person like that in your life,
Yeah, that's so important. Yeah, especially in the beginning. Yeah, it's like it reminds me now what you're saying, like, Tony Williams of being 16 or 17 and probably playing with Miles. I wonder how that was like, like.
Man, I heard stories
Tony,
from from Herbie that, he was so freakishly good that they just kind of went with whatever he was doing. Like he just, he was just so present that this was the thing. And then Miles is just such a genius that he was like, okay, I can make this work.
Yeah,
I hear this. I can make this work. And man, that's a band, man. I mean, the same thing with like Elvin and Train, like, man.
Yeah, all those guys. Yeah.
Golly, man, like it's not much you can say about that,
Yeah,
it's just them hooking up, and it's interesting now though. As I get older, I'm like, wow, that actually happened. Like it just seems like a fantasy. Like it seems like an alternate life cycle or like a lifetime. Like I remember like obsessing over it when I was a kid, but now that I'm older, I'm looking at it and I'm listening to the songs, and I'm like, damn, that really happened. Like.
Yeah.
That existed at a certain point of time. That's crazy, man. That's like that's to me, that's wild. Psychologically, that's wild.
No, I listen so much, like to Coltrane still, and so much. I don't know, Life at the Village Vanguard still for me one of the favorites. And every time I put it up, man, it's just like it's so modern. It's like it was recorded, 3 months ago, and it's burning, and the spirit.
Yeah.
And it's just like, so much music has been done in between in the 80s, which you put on now. It's like technically, let's say, good, but no spirit, or you know what I mean? It's just a lot of it. But this is like still, 60 years later, amazing. Like,
yeah, man.
Incredible.
Different breed of cats, man.
Yeah. All about the spirit. I've talked like to, who told me, like Jerry Berganzi, the saxophone player.
Oh, yeah.
He said like he saw Coltrane many times live in Boston. And when you entered the room, like it was just all about the spirit.
Oh,
it
man.
was just the music, that it was such powerful energy there that it was just,
dude.
I just imagine that, man. Yeah.
Bobby Hutchinson has a great story that, because he was my mentor and a really good friend. And we talked many, many a days. He loves to talk. Like, it's so great. He told me, the Coltrane Quartet was playing at the Village Vanguard. He was like, oh, I'm gonna go down and check out the homies. And he could barely get in the door. So if the Village Vanguard, you got to walk down the steps and, into the room. So he had to kind of, it was people on the steps outside.
Wow.
But also the room was packed. So he had to weave through because, he was on the guest list and he was just trying to get in and say hello. And when he got to the door, like once he got down the steps into the door, he saw everybody just standing up and just like almost like they were chanting, like they were just like, just doing hands in the air. And he was just like, man, it just looked like straight up church, right? And so he finally made his way, the only way where you can get close to the stage, which is right by the drums. And he saw Coltrane on his knees playing with the bell of his horn into Elvin Jones' bass drum.
Oh, man.
And they were just playing duo, going at it. And he was like, man, he looked into the room. It's like everybody was everybody was on LSD or whatever. Like they were just hippied out, just screaming, saying, it was a whole experience. And he said the most memorable thing about it was that when it was done, everybody hugged each other.
Oh, man.
And said it was so, they felt blessed to experience that moment together. He was like, the whole room. I was like, the whole room? I was like, man.
Yeah, man, I have goosebumps now. You telling me that. Like, seriously, it's just the love and the spirit that the music reflects. That music.
He changed the whole thing, man. Like that's
Is this something you feel? I mean, sometimes when I hear Charles Lloyd's playing, I get that spirit also many times. He has
he has
amazing.
He has it too. Yeah.
How do you feel, as you know, you've been playing with him since, I don't know, 2005, I think, with the Jerry Allen record you guys did. But how is the vibe in Charles's band? I mean, there were many reincarnations, but like in general, how is the work process there? I mean, I'll put it like that.
No, it's great, man. Like he's genuinely a servant to the music. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
for him, the participation into being a conduit for music to flow through is a very important thing for him. And he lives that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there are other aspects to Charles being Charles, which is, you know, that's his, you know, humanity side. But spiritually, with Billy Higgins being his spiritual brother, I mean, they tapped into something, I feel like, when they were young, and it's been enough to stick with him his whole life cycle, you know, this life cycle, I should say. And then also, you know, he was around Cannonball Adderley, you know, Nat Adderley, so to say.
Yeah.
So, you know, he got all the history and he knew everybody, and then he was just one of those guys that just survived, you know, because, you know, the industry even now is not built for musicians to survive, you know.
Yeah, that's a different,
So it was even worse then, you know what I mean? Like, it was just like, come play, we give you some drugs and some alcohol, whatever you need to keep you floating. So Cash was like, all right, cool. You know, you just basic bread and just, you know, but you felt good. At least I hope, you know. And I feel like Miles was one of the only few guys that actually broke away from that. Like, he understood that there was a different market. And Charles too. Like, Charles was the first jazz musician to ever have a platinum album, meaning he sold like 1 million records. Yeah. And so I think him and Miles figured out like a different secret into the industry, because it just really wasn't built for jazz to be successful. I don't think that ever was the thing. And so I'm glad now it is, because, you know, you can be a jazz drummer and take care of a family, and, you know, you can get endorsements, and, you know, you can travel the world and all kind of stuff like that. But, you know, I remember McCoy Tyner telling me when, you know, we was playing trio for a lot of those years. Like, you know, he would come off the road with Train, and he still didn't have enough money to take care of his family, so he would have to drive taxi cabs, you know. That's crazy, right? You know, you get into a cab and it's McCoy Tyner asking you where you got to go, you know. And you're like,
oh, man, come on. that's
real talk, man. Real talk, man. He was just like, he had to do everything possible to make it work. And then, you know, finally, when he started doing his own trio thing, you know, when he got older, like late 30s, early 40s, you know, that's when it worked out. Like, you know, he really saw some real money. And his agency, like, which was a good agency, Abbey Hoffer, because they're like a talent agency too. So, you know, they bring in people to audition for like commercials and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, they had a wide list in which to introduce McCoy with his accolades, you know, into a different bracket of industry. And it was like, man, it really worked. So it's, you know, one thing is it's about timing. Two is about dedication. Because one thing I've learned from McCoy Tyner is that you just got to keep trying something. You just got to keep, you know, you can't afford to just sit back and be like, all right, I'm going to wait for something to happen. Like, you'll be waiting forever. Like, you just can't. You just got to keep trying. So even if nothing works, the effort that you're putting into has its own reward. Like, it's just
the process, the way, like the path.
Yeah, that's it. You just got to, you know.
I agree. Yeah, it's true, because even when you're making records, like, at least for me, you know, like the fun part is writing the music, recording it. And then, at least for me, that when the record comes out, it's like, well, yeah, okay. I mean, I'll put it on the shelf, and, you know, I love playing the music then, but like as a record per se, it's like, okay, it's a record. I don't know.
Yeah, and everything's so saturated. The process. Yeah. It's so saturated, so you got to deal with it from a physical and a metaphysical perspective. The physical perspective is that, okay, you know, you create the content, you put it out, you hope that it does well, And then you reach out and support other aspiring artists and your friends and all that kind of stuff to keep the thing going. Metaphysically, you just wish the best on that bad boy. You're like, yo, I hope y'all like it. I hope it's cool. I hope it brings love and joy,
Yeah.
And you keep, just throwing love into that, and then, seeing how that's going to work itself out. And it somehow it does. I don't,
it does. Yeah. It does. Yeah. Speaking of Charles, I love the last record, Tone Poem, you did. You and Ruben are like,
man, that's my man. Man, I feel like we was born at the same time.
Yeah, you start with peace, and you two guys start that record with like it's like, man.
Yeah, he's one of those cats that are. I would say Ruben and like Jason Moran are probably the two guys that every time we play, I don't even have to think. Like, it's just my natural, not even instincts. It's just my natural feel. How you sit at the drums and it's just like your own natural, like, muscle memory, like your own mechanics or, whatever instrument. It's like, I could just be sitting down practicing and then we're just naturally locking up. Like, that's all we do is practice together. And I was like, God damn. And, but I also know that that's why, I aspire to play with different people, because you can get used to that. You know what I mean? And it has a way of, it's not the, it's as good as it is. It's also not as good because you start to expect every experience to be like that, right? And so you start to not grow anymore because you're like, oh shit, these cats, anything is possible. It's like, yeah, absolutely. But I welcome the struggle when I play with different people, and I'm always open to try different things so that I can just learn more for myself, and then within that I can bring something to a different situation that I probably wouldn't have had that experience before if I was just like, oh,
Yeah, I agree.
My Ace Boom Coons, my dudes.
No, I love that about you because I listened to the 2 records to Charles Lloyd and the last one by Chris Potter, and it's so diverse. Like what you do, what you're playing is like, and on the one hand, like this more open style with Charles, and with Chris, it's kind of like really more like with Liberty or this cast, like more complex structures. Or I love how you do it, how you approach that, and you make it sound so effortlessly. And I wanted to ask you this, like already here with Liberty or with Greg, let's say when you play like really complex structures, what's your approach when getting like a lead sheet that's like really,
Well, first of all, man, forgive me. I just want to apologize because I made a statement before that, it's like a cliche statement when people say Ace Boom Coons. And I just realized, like, I was like, wow, that's a very negative statement. So I know if people are going to see this, please disregard that, because that just came into my awareness today. It was something that, me being from Texas, from the South, it was just, people would say it all the time, but now I've realized the deprecation of what that means, and that's horrible. So, my bad. That would never happen again. My aces. So that was that. But as what you were saying, like what was given to me, the thing about Liberty and Greg Osby and Charles is that, well, I will start with Charles first because he's the sage, he's the guru. Mm-hmm. Basically, Charles just gives you a roadmap. Charles is like, look, do you know the song? And if you say, yeah, that's enough. That's it.
Yeah.
Like it's you don't have to prove anything other than that. But for him, it's like if you know the song, then there's a trust factor that he can be free and y'all can go anywhere. But if you don't know the song, he doesn't feel like he can trust you. So it's like you'll spend time really working out what the song is. And it could be a simple song, but it's just, he's like, I just want to know that you know it, Yeah. And then once you know it, forget it. That's his whole thing. Like, once you know it, forget it. You're like, well, why did I learn it? He's like, you'll understand. And you do. You start to understand. Like, you're like, oh, man, okay, cool. Like, you just want to know we cool. without forcing somebody to be cool. And I feel like Greg Osby and Liberty was the same way. Like, even though they had more conceptual type ideas, and I would say definitely more Greg was more conceptual, because of him being a part of the M-Bass thing. Like he had these ideas that he wanted to see implemented, within, specifically for me in the drums. Like a lot of those drum patterns that you heard on Inner Circle were actual ideas that he was hearing, and he would like sing them to me, and I was like, okay, cool.
Wow, okay. Oh wow.
Yeah. I was like, all right, let me sit with this for a second, so that it could become my own thing, because it wasn't like I was like, man, this is weird. Like, you want me to do this, But I was like, okay, cool. Like, that's the groove, the exact groove you're hearing. He was like, absolutely, and I'm like, damn, okay, cool. Man, wow. Yeah, some people are just like that. Gonzalo Rubalcaba the same way. Like, he's the first person I ever played with that actually wrote out like a classical drum part.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, like where to hit the snare, how many toms you were supposed to have, because they were outlined in the drum key. When to hit the cymbals, when to close the hi-hat, when to open the hi-hat, when to hit the bass drum. I mean, like, down to the key, bro.
Like for the head, like for the head of a song. Or...
Oh, yeah, for the head. He was cool. Wow. Once he got in the solos, absolutely. Okay. But
oh, man. Wow.
He heard, because, see, me and Gonzalo have a good relationship because the piano was my first instrument and drums was his first instrument. And so he, I guess he studied like a lot of like classical drumming. Yeah. That, I mean, his writing for percussion is ridiculous, man. Like, you don't want to talk about something that would keep you in the shed for like a week before a recording. Like, you'd be sitting there.
Yeah.
And he knows it so well that he just trusts the people that he plays with. So, I remember when he called me to come in and do some trio stuff, he didn't even send me any music beforehand. Like, he just, all of a sudden we get to the studio, he just put that piece of paper in front of me, and I'm like, yo.
Oh, man.
Wait, I'm supposed to play this? He's like, oh, yeah, man, it's cool. Like, you just notate the drum key, and then you see how the placement. Man, I was over there frustrated, scared, just like, oh, man, I'm about to butcher all this.
Yeah, man.
And, eventually we got it together, but, it's crazy. Like, that's, some cats really have a deep concept. And I love it because all you can do is get better. Like, I'm playing with Gonzalo, Miguel Zenon, being in the SF Jazz Collective.
Everyone, yeah.
It's like, man, my reading is great. I mean, I can pretty much sight read on a dime, put a chart in front of my face. I'm like, let's go. It's cool. We can play the tune right now. And I wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for those guys, challenging me to just, get that aspect of what that was supposed to be together. So, Yeah. But back to the point you were saying, Charles and Liberty were very open. Liberty had some conceptual stuff too that was kind of similar to Greg's, but not as intel, we just had to figure it out. It was mostly about understanding the song, seeing where it wanted to go, and then just locking up as a band.
Sure.
And then, simple. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, I maybe it's not so simple, but
No. But in a way, it is simple. Yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
you sometimes see a chart of someone, and you're like, yeah sure, So if I hear you play, it sounds so simple, or like Nasheed or whoever, it's just like, man, it's like the water flowing through the chart or over it, and that's beautiful. I mean, that's the music. So
yeah, you got to be able to let it go, man. That's the whole biggest thing.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. What Charles would say. He was like, once you know the tune, forget it.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's a thing, man. That's an actual
thing.
thing.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, imagine someone telling you, okay, once you understand life, forget it.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, I know what you mean. For me, for me, I know what you mean. Like, yeah.
That's everything. That's the whole thing. Yeah. Because, the attempt to even understand life comes with all of these labels and descriptions about the way things are and what they should be, right? And so if you can retain all of that information and then have the ability to forget it,
Yeah.
you know how deep that is, man?
That's the shit.
That's like,
yeah.
That's the whole practice of non-attachment. That's like, I understand, but it doesn't matter. Like, and that's what makes beautiful music, is the understanding, but also that it doesn't matter.
True. Yeah. In a way, it's
You
true.
know?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Definitely true. Yeah. But you mentioned Charles, and I wanted to, and we mentioned Greg and Rodney. I wanted also to ask you about Terence.
Terence, the same. Yeah, he's.
What's your story with him? How did you? I love Bones, but Bones. I did like this interview with Lionel Lueke, like last week.
Oh man, that must have been great.
Oh man, I love. He's such a cool guy. I love him.
Yeah.
And he's kind of the same spiritually as you, like this same beautiful vibe going on.
Yeah.
You both kind of started with Terence, and I wanted to ask you, how did your story with Terence begin? Because did he also encourage you to start composing more and writing? Because you wrote that beautiful 7/4 song.
Oh, Transform. Yeah.
Transform. Yeah, I love that one. And like, how was your story with Terence? I mean,
man, that was that's a great story as well. Because what happened is I was playing with Betty Carter, and Mark Shim, he was the tenor player that was on the Liberty album, was already playing with Terence, and they were doing they were doing some soundtrack based off of a film that he had already been working on, and the band had like Carl Allen in it, and a bunch of different people. But anyway, what ended up happening was that Mark Shim, he played because we always played together all the time in Brooklyn. Like he was living in Brooklyn, I would go over to his house and we would just play duo stuff because we just wanted to practice all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So he played some of the stuff he had to Terence while he was in the band. And so Terence was like, yo, you think this cat would want to be in the band? And I'm sure Mark was like, absolutely. Yeah, and it was interesting because I was in Betty's band, but it was at a time when Betty had just got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Yeah. So she had to cancel a bunch of tours, and she was just pretty much, she was just going through it. And I didn't want to leave. Like Betty was like my second mom. So I lived, she had a brownstone. So she lived in the top 3 floors, but I lived in the ground floor apartment, which was separate, but attached to the brownstone. Yeah. So I got to see her every day,
Oh, wow.
I mean, imagine that,
Yeah.
We talked all the time. We would sit on the steps and watch people, and she had all these amazing stories.
That's so beautiful.
Oh man, she's the best.
Yeah.
And so, when she was going through that, I was like, wow, okay, cool. I just wanted to be there for her. So I didn't worry about anything. And the funny thing is, like, in that time, I got a bunch of calls. I got called from Joshua Redman because he was changing his quartet, and he wanted the quartet to be like me, Aaron Goldberg, and Ruben Rogers. And I was like, man, I can't imagine just going on the road right now. I need to just kind of be here and just kind of figure this out. And he was cool. So, Greg Hutchinson ended up doing that gig. Yeah. I mean, the guru.
Yeah,
right? Come
sure.
on.
He killed it, yeah.
the master,
Yeah.
So that happened. And so, I started to get concerned because it was like a few months in, and I knew I wasn't working. And, and Betty was giving me some deep insight. So I just wanted to absorb all of that as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then, when she passed, it was funny. I mean, not funny, but I got the call from Terence. Like, Terence called me up and he was like, yeah, bro, I heard you playing with Mark Shim, just trying to see if you'd be down to join the band. And I was like, man, yeah. And I was emotional because I was like, man, Betty just passed. So, I don't even know how I feel, but, I'd be honored. Thanks for, thinking of me in this time. And man, and that's legitimately how it happened. And so,
Wow.
I dashed out there, and, we just started playing the music that he had been doing. And then it was a whole growth cycle because I learned so much about playing with Terence. And this has always been my thing. Like, no matter who calls me to play with him, I always do background research. So pretty much, I researched everybody that they've played with.
Yeah,
you know, so I knew Terence had played with Art Blakey. You know, he had played with Troy Davis. You know, that was a drummer in this band.
Yeah.
I knew he really loved Jeff Tane Watts, and I knew he played with Carl Allen. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm gonna stick with these 4, and I'm gonna try my best to put those into my vocabulary. And so, even before the first gig, I was just listening to Tane, Troy Davis, you know, Carl Allen, and Art Blakey. Art Blakey I had already been listening to since high school, so that was easy. But the other 3, I was like, I haven't done as much research on these guys. I mean, with Tane, of course.
Tane, yeah, sure.
But Troy Davis, I hadn't done a lot of research on that, you know, to know he had a lot of Tane-isms, but, you know, he had a strong simplicity thing that I found to be phenomenal, man. Like the way he would play like simple ballads was crazy. I was like, so, you know, it's stuff like that. I feel like that just adds to your vocabulary. And I always, you know, try to tell any upcoming musician, I was like, man, try to check out as much as possible and don't overwhelm yourself. But if an artist call you, you know, just pay attention to the people that they played with before, because is what's familiar to them. Like, same thing with Joshua Redman. When I finally got the chance to play with Joshua Redman, man, I checked out so much Blade. I checked out, you know, so much Jeff Ballard, because I know he played with Jeff Ballard. Yeah. You know, I just went down the list. Like, I was like, I got to do the homework, because if I don't, then I don't have the language in which to speak with him or to allow him to feel comfortable so that he can get to his thing. And then I can, you know, find something within my thing. So, you know, it's important, man. It's really important, at least to me. But
yeah, that's beautiful. No, that sounds beautiful. What you're saying. Yeah, it makes sense in a way. Also, you know, you make it then easy for the artist who calls you, because he settles in a nice, you know, pillow.
Right.
That's nice.
I mean, it was the same thing with McCoy, man. Like, man, McCoy called me out of the blue.
Yeah, how did the McCoy story happen with Bobby? That album, I love that album with Bobby and Charnet.
Man, McCoy, look, he just called me out of the blue one day. Well, okay, he heard me. It was a double bill we did. I was playing with Betty Carter, and McCoy was the headliner. So he heard me in that situation. But also, McCoy came and did a master class at my high school. And so I got a chance to play with him then when I was like a kid. So he somehow remembered both of those, you know, situations, and was like, man,
oh, wow,
you know, I've been waiting on you. And I was like, really? Like, I was like, I've been waiting on you forever. Like, I was just like, yo, you know how many times I listened to Love Supreme and how much I played all your music? Like, it was ridiculous. And so he called me one day, man. I answered the phone. I didn't even know it was him. You know, all I heard was, this Eric Harland. And I was like, yeah. Who's this? This is McCoy Tyner. And I was like, I thought somebody was playing a prank on me, man. I was sitting there like, come on, man. Like, for real. Yeah, babe. Would you be down to do just a duo rehearsal? You know, just do some playing? And I was like, absolutely. He's like, you know, I can pay you $100. It's cool. And I was like, what? You gonna pay me $100 just to play?
Oh, man.
I was like, get the hell out of here. Man, I drove to New York as fast as I could. And man, he had rented out, I think, like one of those, like, you know, SIR, like, you know, spots in the city, piano and drums, man. And we just played. And then I got nervous because after we played, I didn't hear anything. Like, it was like, like 8 months, nothing. I was like, damn, I fucked it up. Shit. But, you know, played too much, got too excited, something. I thought I fucked the whole shit up, you know. But I was, you know, in myself, I was like, you know what? I got the opportunity. Just got to be gracious about that. You know, not many people can say they got a chance to just play duo with
McCoy. Yeah. That's like,
I mean, imagine having Instagram back then, you know, just have the camera set up. Like, man, it's going down. Right? Me and McCoy going down. It's going down. Man, but 8 months later, I get a call from his management. You know, and they were like, McCoy has a tour. Just wanted to find out if you could make the tour. You know, you're going to be going out for like 3 months. And I was
you did a tour also. Oh, wow. I thought you just did the record. Oh, wow.
Oh, no, man. We went on the road for like at least 4 years.
Oh, man.
So I played the trio and the quartet. So at first it was the quartet. with Bobby Hutcherson. But then it became these different versions of trios. And then even more than that, man, look, we did quartet one time with Michael Brecker, bro.
Really? Oh yeah, I love that band. I saw that band, not with you on drums. I don't know who was on drums then. In Ljubljana with Mike and McCoy.
Oh man, dude.
Michael was killing, right? I love Michael. He was like one of my heroes. I mean,
dude,
really,
that was sick. That was like, it was so heavy because the thing about Michael Brecker, man, is just that, man, that's a bad dude, man. I mean, we know he's great, and for the reasons that he's great, because of the Brecker brothers and the fusion. Because I'm a total fusion head. That's my shit.
I really,
but
wow.
Oh man, I'm super man. I always wanted to be a fusion drummer. Like I became a jazz drummer because of the love of John Coltrane, which allowed me to fall in love with Elvin Jones, which allowed me to fall in love with Coltrane. Pretty much introduced me to jazz.
Yes. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay.
Because I wouldn't have known who Miles Davis was if it wasn't for John Coltrane. Like it was just, I was like, shit. I want to listen to everything John Coltrane is on, and so he became the actual tree, and then everybody else was the branches. Like I was like, oh shit, McCoy is killing, Elman is killing. Yeah. Oh my God, Miles Davis is killing. And then it's like, ooh. And then Miles Davis became another tree, and I was like, ooh, who is he playing with? And it was like, ooh, Keith Jarrett's killing. Oh, Jack DeJohnette's killing. Oh my God, who's this cat? Chick Corea.
We're all the same. I love that.
Yeah. Exactly.
So cool, man. I love that. Yeah. But you were into fusion. What that means? You listened like to the fusion guys, like the drummers, also. And
oh man, Billy Cobham.
Really? Oh,
man,
wow.
Dennis Chambers, Vinny. Dave Weckl.
Oh, wow.
Oh man, I was wearing them boys out. Like that was man. Because I grew up in the church, and so that was the sound that we were pretty much going for. Like I was totally into like gospel chops, and that was my thing. Like you grow up in the church. That's how you learn how to play. So it was only when I got under like Rodney Jones, Greg Osby, Betty Carter, Joe Henderson, all those people, they were the ones that pulled my coattail. They were like, yeah, that ain't it. And I was like, oh, damn, I thought that was the thing. They were like, nah. I mean, they were like, it's cool, it's cute. That was always their thing. Like, it's cute.
Oh, man, that's the worst. It's interesting, but,
Right. It's not the vibe. And, it's because you're not listening, you're not interacting. You just kind of, you just kind of manhandling the drums. And it was just, Betty told me a bunch of times, she was just like, yo, play as if women are in the audience listening. And I was like,
wow, that's a good one.
Oh, that changes your whole thing. Cause you're like,
that does, man. Even now when I think like, okay, I'll say this next time also to myself. Like, well,
man,
okay.
It was just like, yeah, that was something that was very, very important to her, And I always say the same thing. People have heard 1,000 times. Like, she was the one that taught me how to play ballads because I would just kind of do the brushes and and she teased me. She was just like, would you want to just hear an air condition going on over and over and over again? And I was just like, not really. She was like, then stop playing the brushes like that.
That's beautiful.
It was like, shh. Like, that ain't sexy,
Yeah.
Put some dips in there, play with the, know the lyrics. That was another important thing for her. She was like, if you don't know the lyrics, you don't know the song. And I was like, damn, all right, I just feel like with all the greats, all I was doing was apologize. Damn, I'm sorry. My bad. Golly. Keep fucking up. Shit. Okay. All right. I'll get it. Next time. I got you. But I'm grateful that they all gave me the opportunity to just be in that space, man. Like it's just, I'm trying to be that person for the younger generation now, because I feel like, a lot of the elders are not telling the younger generation the truths that they need to hear, and so I feel like they're just feeling lost, and they're paving their own way, and now it's getting to a point that it's like its own style of rebellion, which is cool, but it's only rebellion because they miss the insight from someone that has already at least walked some of the journey, and can actually just kind of give a little bit back, So
definitely, yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You played with all these band leaders, right?
man.
And I wanted. I mean, you played with everyone. Almost like
Oh man.
I love that. And like, but I wanted to ask you, how did you decide to become a band leader yourself? I mean, you know, the Voyager. I love the compositions there. Like we mentioned, Transform on Terence's record, like that 7/4 beautiful song. But you wrote so many other beautiful compositions on the first Voyager.
Yeah.
And
Oh man.
I wanted to ask you, how do you write usually? Like, you know, Turn Signal. I love Turn Signal. I love that repetitive.
Oh man. Yeah.
Like, how do you write a song like that or a composition? What's your process usually when composing first? Like, you sit down.
Well, I'm a piano player, so the thing for me is that I write all the time. And so I honestly never really thought about having a band. Like I was just writing not competition. I was writing compositions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I would get called to be in like an all-star band and
like Aziza kind of, or
like Aziza, yeah. And so you know the requirements was like, or like the collective, everything was like, you know, have an original composition or a redo, or you know, like an arrangement of another composition that you love or something like that. You know, so I just got into the habit of writing. I mean, like you can see it. You know, I got keyboard back there, I got a piano right here, and I'm just, man, when I'm in the studio, I'm always writing, man, always writing. I keep sheet music. It's just, I love writing music, and a lot of it goes nowhere because it's hard. What's most important to me is how well everybody can feel comfortable to play. So based on that, what happened was Voyager kind of organically came together. Because initially, the first Voyager was, I got a chance to go to Japan, and that was with, that was the first Voyager that I did with Aaron Parks, Matt Penman, and Kurt Rosenwinkel. That was the very first Voyager group.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I had these tunes that I had written for like the SF Jazz. So Matt Penman had played them before, so I was like, cool. And then we had already done a bunch of trio stuff and quartet stuff with Parks, which was like Invisible Cinema and all that kind of stuff. And then I had already played. We all love Kurt Rosenwinkel. Like, who doesn't love Kurt Rosenwinkel? So it was like, man, let's just, you know, make this a band. But it became complicated because everybody was so busy. Like,
yeah, sure.
You know, Penman was busy, Parks was busy, Kurt was busy. So I ended up, Taylor Eigsti ended up calling me out of the blue to do some trio stuff with him. And I was like, cool. And so I started playing with him, and I was like, man, this guy is killing.
Yeah.
And then he introduced me to Julian. Julian was like a baby. He was like 18.
Yeah.
But killing. Like, just, I was like, who is this young shredder? And so it became like a quartet, but it was still like the Taylor Eigsti quartet. So it was like me, Taylor, Julian, and it used to be Ruben Rogers, but then it became Harish.
Oh yeah.
So I told him, I was like, man, look, I like all three of y'all. Would y'all mind, just doing this tour? Like, this French promoter hit me up and was like, man, I'll book a tour for you. And also I'm interested in doing a live recording if you're cool with that. And I knew I had all these songs, and I was like, man, that sounds great. So I hit up Harish, Taylor, and Julian. Mm-hmm. I was like, y'all cool? And Walter was like, oh man, you got to get Walter. And I was like, that's my dude from Houston. Like, that's my high school homie. That's absolutely. So I hit up Walter, and then Walter was like, yeah, I'm down, you know. And that became Voyager, man. That Live by Night album was our very first tour. And we played like a week at the Sunside Jazz Club in Paris. And that's what that was, man. We recorded that whole week. And we also did another one in Clermont-Ferrand. Mm-hmm. It's like a small town, like southern France, south of Paris or whatever. I guess kind of central France. And so it was a couple of takes from there, but that was that whole thing. And so the music that I had been writing worked for that band because I didn't know what band I was writing for. So it was just like I was writing music that could kind of just live in like this ethereal space. And it allowed room for interaction. It was like, okay, pretty much the songs just have melody and sections. That's it. As long as we honor the melody and the sections, everything will be fine. And and that's what that's ended up, that's how it ended up happening. Like, it wasn't too detail oriented because it was supposed to allow room for everybody to be able to, enhance the material on its own, because I feel like if I wanted songs that if we were going to play every night, they could also, the song itself could also grow.
Go somewhere else.
Man, could always go somewhere.
Yeah.
Like never feel locked in. It's like, okay, we doing that one again. Okay, all right.
Yeah, sure.
You know that look. Anytime you got to be like, all right.
Yeah.
Down, you already know. It's like, damn. Yeah. Cat cussing you out. You just over there like bullshit.
But do you still plan to do something as a band leader, like a new record, or are you preparing something new, like kind of new Voyager thing, or?
Yeah, we'll do another one. We have this every 4-year thing. So we did 2010, that was the first one. We did 2014, that was Vipassana, and then we did 2018, that was 13th floor. And so now we're gonna, we're planning for 2022.
Okay, wow, super.
Yeah.
Looking forward to hear that. Yeah. Well, what about Aziza? I saw you guys in Udine. I think it was like 218 live, and it was just burning. You and Dave. Dave, of course. It's like,
oh man, Dave's
talking about elastic bass playing over odd meters, and you two guys together. Like,
dude, it took me a while to learn how to play with Dave because, when you think about a bass player, you think about somebody that's just kind of holding it down, right?
Yeah.
Man, Dave is like a drummer on bass. Like he just be everywhere, and I was like, God, man. So I was just like, when we first played, I wasn't sure. So it gave me insight as to why Jack was so killing, because it was just like, when you listen to that hookup, man, you can check out like a bunch of those Michael Brecker records.
Yeah.
Where it was Dave and Jack. Man, it goes down so hard.
It's amazing.
Like I feel like people don't even understand. And then it's like some of the early Miles stuff,
Yeah.
Man. They got to a thing that it was just loosey-goosey, but at the same time, it was super supportive. And the way that the band would interpret it, like the way that Keith and Chick would play over it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah.
And then the way Miles would center the tone so that it was just like the rumble would happen, but yet there was this definition of sound. Oh man, come on, man. I need everybody to grow up and just take all that in and let's just go from there. You know what I mean? Like it's so special,
Yeah.
And so, it took me a minute to learn how to play with Dave because I had never experienced anything like that. Dave was just like, from beat one, he'd be like, let's go. And
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was feeling like Jack. I was just over there like, I don't know what I'm doing. I hope it's cool. And he'd be over there just smiling. Yeah, baby, that's it. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so I was learning something new on the spot with him. Because I was like, yo, you gonna hit one?
Exactly. Exactly. You listen never to play records with Marvin in the 80s or with Billy Kilson, the later.
Yeah. Oh, dude. See, I think he started grounding. At least, see, that's I still think Billy Kilson was probably one of the greatest hookups with Dave. You know what I mean?
Me too. I love that quintet.
Man, and I feel like that's when Dave, he locked it down for that. And but I don't know if that was more on Billy because that pocket was so killer. Like I was just like, God damn. Like I was just sitting there like, wow. Like it was at moments unbelievable how deep the pocket was that Billy Kilson and Dave Holland had. Like,
did you see that band live?
As much as I could.
As much as I could. 2 times also, yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Because it was like Chris Potter and Robbie Eubanks and Steve Nelson. They they could just do whatever. They just over there floating and shit. Robin taking long ass solos, Chris Potter taking long ass solos. But I was just like, they would be back there playing some shit in 7 or 9, making that shit feel like
effortless.
Like some old 70s, just man, like I couldn't explain it. I was just like, damn, that's that's actually killing. And so I was also happy when Nate Smith got in the band because, I could tell he had checked out a bunch of Billy Kilson. So, he had the same pocket.
Yeah.
But when we did Aziza, Dave was back to his, Comforts of the Birds vibe. So, he wasn't, because I thought I was like, oh, cool. Like, I checked out, the Cats. What's up?
Yeah.
I'm ready to lay it down. Dave was like, nah, I'm good. Be yourself. And I was just like, ow, shit.
No, it's beautiful what you guys did.
Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's good.
Great. Cool, Eric.
Yeah.
I will not bother you anymore.
No, good times, man. Thank you, man. Thanks for
so
being
much
a part of this.
for sharing all these stories. So beautiful to hear you.
Nah, it's good times, man.
Yeah.
Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.